up my answer key so you can check your work with my work and ask any questions you might have for me. Okay. So here is question number 1. So in question 1, you have your 3 rams. And each of those rams is a part of our Riemann sum lesson. And what you can do is kind of compare your answers and work to each of those 3 rams. So what I did to just make my life easier was kind of made a table with all the important values that I might need. And then I just went and plugged them in to each of the formulas. Okay, any questions on number 1? I think this is going to keep sitting there. I don't click that. Okay. All right. And then down here for number 2, we did letter A. So in letter A, the shape you create when you graph that function is a trapezoid. So you created a trapezoid right here with the x-axis. So your height was from the -3 to the 1. Your base 1 was 1, and your base 2 was 9. So it's 1/2 the height, base 1 plus base 2, or 20. Okay, and then on the back, I had you look at letter D. I liked letter D because it was a generic. So once again, you had to graph your equation, which was 2a, or 2 theta, which is kind of like 2x. So you just graph your function, and then at that point, you pick any generic A and any generic B. So the height of the graph at A is 2a, the height of the graph at B is 2b. And once again, we have a trapezoid. So it's 1/2 the height, which was b minus a, plus or times the height at A plus the height at B, which was 2a plus 2b. So then you clean that up. A half times 2a plus 2b canceled. So you got b minus a, b plus a, which is a difference of squares. So you get b squared minus a squared. Okay, and then I only made you do letter A on your calculator. So hopefully you're able to just kind of take your calculator and plug that in. Number 4, I really think that this type of problems are important. Being able to understand how to go from one function to another, how to manipulate and change them. The only one that was maybe a little tricky is letter E. E is undefined because there is no definition or area with which it goes from -1 or -4 to 1. Therefore, it is undefined. Now, undefined is different than no solution. You do not put no solution. That's not the same. There could be a solution. We just don't know it. So if you don't know something, it's undefined. Anything on there you're confused about? Okay. And then on the back, I gave you the option to pick any 5 you wanted. So obviously, I'm just going to put up kind of the work to all of them. so that you can sort of see how to do each of these. So letter A was negative 25. Letter B was 25 halves. So both of those are power rules. So if you have a constant, you get linear. If you have linear, you go to quadratic. Letter C is also like a linear. You can factor out that 1/2. So that would turn it to a quadratic. Okay, and letter D. Letter D is a polynomial, so it has a constant, linear, and quadratic. So that turns this into a cubic. And your power rule applies to each part individually. So your power rule applies to each part individually. And then in letter E, we had a trig function like what we worked and talked about yesterday. So the antiderivative of cosine is sine. So you have sine x, and then you're evaluating from 3 pi halves to 0. So sine at 3 pi halves was negative 1, and sine at 0 is 0. If you have a fraction in which your denominator has a linear variable, then we know that that's a natural log. So letter F was a natural log. You pulled the 3 out in front because it didn't fit with the ln. So that gave you 3 natural log of x plus 2, which gave you 3 natural log of 7 minus 3 natural log of 2. And then down at the bottom, just because z was part of a fraction didn't make it a fraction. So you had 2z, and then it became z squared. So that gave you a half times a half, or a half times a fourth, which gave you an eighth. So just looking at that review, looking at everything we talked about yesterday, everything we've talked about over the past few days, and or any homework from your textbooks. I know I haven't gone over it. We've had some issues with classmates being in and out due to illnesses, due to a bunch of things. So are there any homework questions you have from a homework meeting we didn't go over yet, but I kind of could answer for you before we take our quiz? Hey, be nice. Okay. So, like the very first one we did. Okay, let me see. Oh, look at that. There's a RAM problem right there. So I'm gonna say, let me see if I just have like a random, like kind of RAM problem to go over with you. What? Okay, so like this is pretty much a standard RAM question. So it said selected values of a continuous function f are given in the table above. What is the left Riemann sum approximation for this function from 1 to 10 using 4 subintervals indicated by the table? So if it says 4 subintervals by the table, then what happens is we're breaking this into 4 subintervals and they're not equally spaced. if it was 4 equally spaced subintervals, then you would do the upper minus the lower and divide it by how many intervals you had. If they were going to do the upper minus the lower for this function, they would probably have picked 3 subintervals because you'd have had 9, and 9 divided by 3 would have been 3. But because the table values aren't evenly spaced, they just said, hey, go with what's in the table. So the distance from 1 to 3 is 2. So that 2 is going to represent the width of the first set of triangles. So it's going to be 2 times the height, and the height is going to come from whichever side of the ram it picked. So in this case, it picked left. So if this is my rectangle, the left is at 1. So the height at 1 is negative 0.2. So then that would be negative 0.2 plus my next width, which is 1. And now it's always going to be the left part of the triangle. So negative 0.1 plus width of 3 and 0.5 plus a width of 3 and 0.6. So then to get your final answer, you're just going to multiply each of those times each other. So 2 times 0.2 becomes negative 0.4. 1 times negative 0.1 is negative 0.1. And 3 times 0.5 gives me positive 1.5. And 3 times 0.6 gives me positive 1.8. So now when you add those together, negative 0.4, negative 0.1 is negative 0.5. So that cancels that 0.5. So you have 1 plus 1.8, which gives you letter choice B, which was 2.8. So does that kind of help with the RAMs? Because this is actually an AP classroom question. So this is like how an AP question might be worded for a Riemann sum. That would be a multiple choice. Exactly. So if I was asking for right, then I would have done this point, that point, that point, and that point. So the only difference is including the negative 0.2 or including the 0.4. A midpoint. So if they were going to do a midpoint for this one, it would have been 2 subintervals. So they would have made this one rectangle and this your other rectangle, so that the midpoint was in between both of those. So like this width would have been 3, and your midpoint would be negative 0.1, and then that width would be 6, and your midpoint would be 0.6. Pretty much. They don't leave it open to interpretation. So it's not like you're going to do left, Bethany's going to do right, and Chase is going to do M, and I'll get different answers for the same problem. The problem is going to be specific to what it wants. Anybody think they need any more that look like this, where they give you a whole bunch of values? I just did. Like literally, I just did. Hey Chase, thanks for listening. Welcome to class. Okay, so hold on. No, it's okay. Like, so, like if this one, how this one goes 1 to 5 and then 3 to 5. So you're saying like, could you do one where it's like you find 1 to 3 because it's like not on there? Yes. All right. So if you're using these values and it asks you to find the integral from 1 to 3 of f of x dx, then the idea would be that I need my lower bound to be 1 and my upper bound to be 3, and I have both of those in my givens, it's just that they're both lowers. So in order to make them be 1 lower and 1 upper, I'm going to start with the lower, so I'm going to start with the 1 to 5 of f of x dx. And then I need this upper to match down here. So I need this to have a 5. So in order to get a 5 down here, you have to multiply the integral by a -1. So we're going to subtract that integral away. So by subtracting it, it flips the bounds. So that makes the new upper 3 and the lower 5. So now the middle bounds match each other. So you have 5 here and 5 there. So they essentially cancel. So this is like finding the integral from 1 to 3. So it would be 1 to 5, which is 3, minus 3 to 5, which flipped as 5 to 3. So your answer is -10. Because it's the same as like adding a negative to that answer, because you're taking it backwards. So you're taking the opposite of what it was. Does that help? Okay. I was just seeing if that's like what they asked, but that was only a small part of what they asked. Yep. Sure. This one? All right, here's my packets. Hold on. This one? Okay. So if A is less than B, which is less than C, which is less than D, and A to D of f of x equals -7, and B to D of f of x equals -2, and C to A of f of x equals 17, then what is B to C for that problem? And I told you what the answer is A, I think, right? From what I remember. Okay. So let me use my paper. I'm going to write all this out. So the idea is we need B to C of f of x dx. There you go, now you can see. And you are not given B to C directly, so you want to find the one that starts with B or has B as an upper bound. Well, the only one that contains a B is the second given, which is B to D of f of x dx. So that gives me what I need to start with. Does that make sense? So that's the first one I'm going to pick. And then I want to find a bound that has a D at the bottom, or a bound I can subtract to put a D at the bottom. So that's the next piece, which is that A to D of f of x dx. So I'm going to subtract that so that it goes from D to A of f of x dx. So now my integral is going from B to A, but I need my integral to go from B to C. So I'm going to use the very, very last one, which is C to A. and I'm going to take its negative, so it's a to c of f of x dx. So that all of my uppers and lowers match. So it's b to d, d to a to c. So I have b to c as my final answer. And then I'm just going to plug in all of like my numbers. So b to d is negative 2. D to A is initially negative 7. So now it's a minus 7. And then A to C is normally 17. Or C to A is 17, so A to C is negative 17. So the minus turns to a positive, so negative 19 plus 7 is in fact negative 12. Is that better? So it's just about like basically taking a lot of the time and just flipping. A lot of them are just flipping your bounds. All right, guys. Then we will take the short quiz. I don't think it should take about 20 minutes because it's only 11. Like I said, it's only 11. The way it's going to work is I have it worked out that the multiple choice, except for 2 of them, are worth 3 points. So 2 of the multiple choice are not worth 3 points because there's no work you can show me. You're either going to get like the right answer or you're going to get the wrong answer. So for most of it, the multiple choice is, sorry, I'm trying to get the remote kids on the Zoom. For most of it, the multiple choice is worth 3 points. 2 of them are only worth 1 point. I know I indicated one. I can tell you what the other one was. I think it was after I said if I didn't get a recognize. But I wasn't going to make it work out right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It came from the function. It comes from the f of x. So like if that function initially had like an f of x at the beginning, that's where I found my values. And then because it had to be, so like b minus a divided by n. So like let's say it was 10 minus 2, which is 8, divided by 4. That gave me sub-intervals of length 2. So if it started, I can't. No, it's fine. There's your quizzes. I was like, I know they're back here. All right. I was gonna say, like, I have to write it down. I can't just like say it. So like if your interval was from 2 to 10 and you have n equals 4, then you have to find your delta x, which is 10 minus 2 over 4. So you get 8 over 4, which is 2. So my delta x is equal to 2. So if my function is 1/2 x squared, and my bounds are 2 to 10, then that means if I'm doing a left Riemann sum, then I have to do f of 2. I have to go 2 spaces further from it, so I need f of 4. 2 spaces further, f of 6, and 2 spaces further, f of 8. Because the rectangles are with 2, so therefore on my function, I need to find the value of that function every 2 spaces. And since it's a left, I start on the left side of the rectangles. Correct. That's okay. I just. What? No, once you're done, you can take a break. Unless you like desperately need to pee, like. I just finished your meal and I want to give you a break now. Alright, so here's the deal. I only am reading the page that says name on it. So like you're gonna get a page for problems and a page for an answer key. I'm only reading the page that has name on it. So make sure you're showing me the work for the multiple choice that you show with me on the page. So if they back the answer page from 1 to 10 for a question. Read the invisible ink. I was going to say I'm only reading the answer page. I will work on this. Probably. Might be 11 now. There were 1 or 2 of them that there wasn't. I don't know where my answer key is. That's some. I have too much going on my desk.